Welcome to Holiday Let's Insider, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the holiday letting industry. Brought to you by Host Planet and Sykes Holiday Cottages, this show is packed with expert insights, real-world strategies, and actionable advice to help you succeed as a holiday let host. I'm James Farley, the founder of Host Planet, and in each episode we'll dive into key topics like property management, guest experience, and revenue growth, and we'll be joined by industry experts who know what it takes to thrive in this sector. In today's episode, Rachel Brennan, the Sales and Operations Manager at Sykes, shares what every aspiring holiday let owner needs to know, from location and finance to amenities and guest experience. Rachel walks us through the key considerations that can make or break your short-term rental investment. Are you looking to take the hassle out of holiday letting while setting yourself up for success? With Sykes Holiday Cottages, you benefit from working with a team of real people with vast experience and knowledge, all providing a unique service to support you every step of the way. 11-time consecutive winners of the Best Large Company for UK Holiday Home Rentals at the British Travel Awards, Sykes uses industry-leading pricing systems, dedicated account management, and a network of more than 700 booking partners to help get the most out of your investment. Sykes aims to combine trusted experience with local expertise to help make your holiday let a success. Get in touch today to find out more. Head to sykescottages.co.uk/letyourcottage for further details. Hello and welcome to the third episode of Holiday Let's Insider. Today's special guest is Rachel Brennan, Sales and Operations Manager at Sykes Holiday Cottages. How's it going, Rachel?
Oh, really well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me on.
It's a real pleasure. All right, then, straight into it. So why are holiday lets a good investment?
So property for many, many years have been a traditional sound investment when you are keeping hold of that property and keeping hold of a sort of ownership of that property for years and years and years. You're seeing that property appreciation value going up and up and up. But when you look at the demand in holiday letting, so if I can rewind a little bit and go back to when we just got out of the pandemic, there was a surge in bookings and borders were closed. We were all tired of our four walls that we were confined to. What it meant was that everyone got out in the UK and actually explored, the natural beauties that are just on their doorstep. And we fell in love with the UK all over again. And we actually fell in love with the UK staycations as well. Just the ease of it, the less stress, the convenience, but also that it was a cheaper option than going, abroad. And there's no, sort of covering up that we are in a cost of living crisis at the moment. And, people are choosing to spend their pennies more wisely. But from what our research shows and what our booking levels show is that holidays are one of the last things that people are willing to give up. I know it from just a personal perspective. There's so much stress of everyday life. You need those holidays to sort of relax, rest, reset, quality time together with friends and family. So they are the last thing to go. We have seen, people sort of downgrading from the sort of foreign overseas holidays to the more local UK staycations, but also seen them sort of downgrading from board types as well. So instead of going for bed and breakfast or dinner bed and breakfast, they're going for self-catering, which means they still get to go on holiday, but can then spend more wisely whilst they're there too. Things like downgrading sort of tick ratings, or star ratings, as you will, is another one. So if they'd have previously gone for 5, they might consider 4 this time round, but also downgrading the length of stays is something that we've seen too. So we've seen people sort of taking more frequent holidays, but actually shorter stays. So this staycation snacking is absolutely on the rise. So where we've seen so many people taking around 3 is the sort of average sort of UK breaks, but much shorter breaks. So we've seen these short breaks on the rise. So what does that look like in terms of bookings? Well, 77% of Brits are planning to take a UK staycation this year, which is, a whopping number. But when we look back at bookings just last year, so 2024 was our biggest ever booking year ever. So even though that sort of demand, and shift sort of post-pandemic, is changing, that demand is still there. So we're riding that, that was a 2% increase on the previous year as well. So the demand is strong, it's consistent. So it really is a good time to be getting into to purchasing a property, but also purchasing a property with a holiday let in mind.
Yeah, that's a great overview, really, of where we are as an industry. And it's interesting. I was speaking to a few people in the data space, and they were saying that when there is a cost of living crisis, one thing that tends to do pretty well is self-catering property in the UK, because you've got more people looking inward than going abroad. So, I mean, that's one of the great reasons. So, I guess now, is it a good time to buy? Because on the one hand, you've got the demand, but on the other, we do have regulation, we've got tax changes, there are other things to consider. So is now a good time?
So we've seen some real positive changes when it comes to mortgages. So we've seen interest rates that are starting to decrease, which is great news. But we've also seen the loan to value. So this is the percentage that lenders are willing to lend to you, and then the percentage of deposit that you would have to do. So typically that's always sat at around 25% deposit with a 75% loan to value. In terms of mortgages, but we have seen that increasing, which is towards sort of 85%, which just means that new owners are sort of entering the market with then a 20, maybe even a 15% deposit. So it's making it easier and easier to get to. And you touched on it there, that there is lots of changes, in this space at the moment when it comes to regulations, license schemes there up in Scotland, and when it comes to some of the tax relief as well, that's available. So it has caused a little bit of a step, particularly around people who have been let in for some time and maybe they are thinking of selling up. It's really caused them to potentially look to sell that little bit earlier, but that has mean that it's just changed this shift in demand and supply, which means that there is more supply with people selling and less demand in terms of people buying. So we've seen some house prices decreasing, which again is great news for new buyers there too. And when we look at those, you only have to look at our holiday homes for sale page. So if you look on there, we've partnered with the likes of Zoopla. We've identified thousands and thousands of properties that are available now, which we've identified as potential good holiday lets, but we've also got our own holiday homes for sale. So these are existing, owners of ours who have already got pre-packaged, pre-made holiday homes that are successful, have got bookings in, have got past bookings and history, but also future bookings. And when we look at those, it's not many, in terms of our whole stock number. We're talking about a 0.6% of our owners that are looking to sell. So it's not many, but there's still some out there. So it is a good time to look to getting into buying now.
Yeah, the common consensus really is that there are going to be challenges over the next year or two with regulation and obviously the tax changes. But if you can hang in there, the demand for local holidays in this country is so strong that if you have a good guest experience, you're going to do really well out of this.
Exactly. And it's just having the expertise to be able to digest all of these changes and actually, sort of put it into a sort of language that you're going to understand, lay terms, dilute that information to go, okay, how is it affecting me and how can I overcome those? And then that's where just having the right agency can come in.
So, in terms of investing, there will be people out there thinking, maybe I want to go down the buy-to-let route, so longer term rentals, or the short-term rental route with a holiday let. Just explain to us the difference and maybe why you should be considering a holiday let rather than a buy-to-let.
Yeah, and when you look at a long-term let, people can see that as it's a regular income. There's not as much risk involved there. They get a tenant in and then they don't have to do much in terms of effort. But the sort of the pros can certainly, outweigh those sort of negatives. So some of it being there is that we've just spoken about the investment of a property and the investment being that appreciation in the property value. With a holiday let, you are protecting that investment that bit more because it's getting cleaned on a regular basis. There's less wear and tear on the property. If you can imagine somebody on holiday versus somebody living there, they are treating that property in a different manner. Half the time they're out and exploring, the sort of the local area rather than being in the actual property itself. But also there's regular maintenance, that's happening at that property. And I've spoken to lots of landlords that have had years and years where they've never even stepped foot in their own property while they've had a sort of tenant in there, and don't know the state of what that property is going to be and when that's come back. So there's no hidden or nasty surprises in that, and all customers and holiday makers are bound by the booking policies and conditions as well. So they've got to go by those rules. And I have met people, that have come over from long-term letting to holiday letting purely because they've had nasty sort of, experiences with disputes with tenants, and that sort of put them off. That's not something that you would necessarily have with a holiday maker when they're staying with you for a relatively short period of time, maybe a couple of days up to a week. Maximum from a short-term rental point of view of 28 nights is the absolute maximum they'd be staying with you. And other bits that are in there as well is that you get to actually have a home away from home. You get to go there yourself. So you have a holiday home that you can go to, even if it is a pure investment. You still might want to go there for just a week or two a year, which is great, even if it's to go and do a really good deep clean or a bit of a repaint or anything like that, and sort of do it yourself. Other bits is really around the price points. So we spoke there about long-term lets, this regular sort of almost steady income coming in, but what you will find is that the price and the sort of the potential from a holiday let is significantly higher versus that long-term monthly rental that you would be achieving. Particularly when you look at the peak periods, you could look at taking that monthly rental in just 1 week, there, and that is where it becomes extremely lucrative. The other side of it is your flexibility with pricing as well. So again, you've got fantastic tenanting your property. There is rising costs, with everything. If you look at that, you've just remortgaged, those interest rates have now gone up. If you've got a great tenant, a lot of the time owners are scared to actually do those price changes that are in relation to inflation, because they're worried that it's going to take that good tenant away from them, that they're going to move away. And sometimes that then cuts into their profit, massively. So whereas with a holiday let, you've got that flexibility on price changes. So you can have a price change that's really linked to the demand in the area. So if you look at our income maximisation options, where we can decrease ever so slightly to a maximum of, say, 10 or 20% from an agreed rate, but we can increase by an unlimited rate. So let's say last year, we had some bank holidays, announced. What happens? The demand, the trends, the customer behaviour changes. You then change your price in accordance to that. There's fantastic weather, the sun shines out, you then can change because your price, because there's been customer changes in behaviour too. So there's some of the key reasons why holiday letting can be much more lucrative than a long-term let.
Yeah, it can definitely be more lucrative. I mean, I think in my experience, you're probably looking at about 3 times the revenue from a holiday let than you would from a regular long-term let. And also, I think a challenge now for people who are doing long-term lets is, legislation is changing. It's going to get more and more difficult to get a tenant out if you need to, but you don't have that issue with short-term rentals because people are coming and going for a few days or maybe a few weeks at a time. So just thinking about how people find the right property, Rachel, what are your top tips for making sure that you get the right rental?
So you've got to start with location. So who is managing the property? Are you going to manage it? So when we're talking about management, we're talking about maintenance. If there's ever a customer issue whilst they are staying with you, and we're talking about the changeover, the cleans, putting those welcome packs in those properties. If you're doing it, you need to be drawing yourself in the middle of the map and maybe an hour maximum radius around you, because you're not going to travel more than that. When we look at our research, we know that about 44% of all of our owners are around 10 miles from their property when they're managing it themselves. Now, if you want to employ somebody to manage it, so for example, we offer in-house services or a network of preferred suppliers, then yes, you can pick anywhere, in the country, and know that that's gonna all be sort of maintained, and we can build that package to sort of suit your needs. But also you need to think about that if you're purchasing something that does have a lot of renovations, do you really want to be miles and miles away from when those renovations is happening? And a lot of the time I've spoken with owners that have said they've seen the property at the start and they see it at the end. And they found that things have cost them more, that maybe jobs haven't been done to the standard or to the extent that they were expecting. So it's just making sure that you are available and that there's a flexibility that you can see the property. So location is everything. But there really isn't a sort of bad, sort of location that you can purchase, in at the moment. We have demand across the whole of the UK, and Ireland. And then when you are actually sort of getting to the property, I almost do it as a bit of a walkthrough, a bit of a tour. So we start outside the property. Think about your local amenities. So think about local transport links, and think about things that people can do in the area. So as we're approaching the property, now we've got that curb appeal of the property. So which of those properties that you're viewing has the most curb appeal? And it might be maybe a rendered sort of paint job, or it could be that we're going to put some new potted plants in there. But which one's going to have the best curb appeal? We know an external shot, does wonders for your listing being the first image. So which one's going to photograph really well? Think about parking. So what is the best parking solution? So off-road parking ideally, but of course in some real sort of honeypot tourist areas, particularly in the centre, that can be difficult. But think about solutions to that, because a customer likes an inclusive rate. So think about, is there a public or private car park that's nearby that you could maybe get an annual pass for that you can include? Customers can then purchase, collect those or even purchase and then sort of take their cars off, and maybe there's a loading bay or something like that nearby. And then as we get into the property, so we walk into the front door. If you're particularly in an area where there's lots of walking, have you got a nice boot room? Particularly if you're wanting to take some fairy friends, could there be a dog wash station? I've seen in some of our properties, which is a great addition and again helps for the cleaning and maintaining of the property. And then we get into our living and kitchen areas. So which property is going to give you the space that's going to comfortably accommodate everybody? That psychology of customers and that sort of value for money is that everyone can sit and play, the sort of board games. Everyone can sit and watch a movie, of a night, and that they're comfortable with all of that. And exactly the same in the kitchen, so that they can all sit around the dining table for a nice family meal. And think about then the outdoor area. So as you step outside, have we got, even if it's a small area, can we have some alfresco dining, just a small bistro sort of set out there for a morning coffee or an evening glass of wine? And think about an enclosed sort of garden for those fairy friends or pets that were pets and children that were taken as well. So it's nice and secure out there. And then when we get upstairs to bedrooms, so think about bedroom to bathroom ratios. So ideally 2-to-1, is great. En suites is fantastic. But 2-to-1 in terms of bathroom is the sort of ideal. At a push, sort of 3 bedrooms to the 1 bathroom. But anything more than that, we're starting to get queues in the morning when we're ready to go out for our local attractions. And again, that sort of doesn't feel like good value for money. So think about the bedroom to bathroom ratios. Think about the bedrooms of how you can sort of position the bedroom furniture, that the bed can be accessed from both sides. Don't have anybody crawling over the bed, to sort of get in. And try not to cram as many people, in there as possible. One of the key things is to aim for luxury and to aim for the best standard that your budget will allow. A lot of our customers, they are picking somewhere that is equal to their own home or better, because they want to go and go, imagine living in a place like this, forever, and they get that luxury for the week or a few days. So that would be a tip of mine, is that, aim for luxury, aim for the best standard that you can possibly get.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great tip. And I was at one of my rentals the other day, and we have a little book there that people can leave a note if they've had a nice experience. And somebody had put, "Why don't you live here?" And I thought, oh, that's a nice thing to say. I mean, it's because it's too small, but I mean, yeah, it was. I get the sentiment. So in terms of your top 10 things to consider, then let's just kind of run through that so that everybody's clear. So first thing to consider.
Location, location, location. So think about who is managing, as I said, that property. Think about those transport links. You want to make sure that you're getting year-round bookings. There's lots of retirees that can go sort of in those off seasons. Think about how they're potentially going to get there if they don't have access to a car, and think about the local amenities that you have around you as well. If you are going for a large property, you very much become the destination. The property itself is. So location doesn't sort of matter as you get up to those sort of 5, 6, 7 bedroom properties. But you do need to consider the offering that you've got in the property. So that this might be those above and beyond extras that you put in there, like hot tubs, like games rooms, cinema rooms, saunas, all of those. Because they're probably not even going to leave the property, that it's that fantastic. But if you are going for, sort of smaller properties, do think about a sort of a full offer of experiences that you can have in terms of location, but best of all, one that's going to be easy for you to manage, maintain, and easy for you to help if a customer has an issue, or as I said, if we're doing it or somebody like ourselves, then make sure you've just got a good management team behind you that can support you with any of those issues.
Yeah, location's so important. And when I got my first rental, it was mainly the location I picked was because it was convenient for me. I was living abroad at the time, but also the reason I liked it was because it had a parking space, had a lovely view of a church, but also it was a short walk to a train station and close to public transport links. So I thought, well, this is going to work for me and it will also work for guests. So yeah, location's so important. So number 2 then, Rachel.
Number 2, getting the right mortgage. So you've got to get a mortgage that will allow you to holiday let. So a specialist holiday let mortgage. So whether that is that you're remortgaging and switching over from a sort of normal buy to let, or you are looking for that. So it's just making sure that you've got the right mortgage. And a lot of lenders will ask you for something called a rental income estimate letter. So that's real proof of what they think, that you are going to be able to secure on this. And that is something that we provide to you. If you're at that stage, we can address that to your lenders and have a little look into booking levels. What sort of figure are you going to be able to generate on a low season week, mid-season and high season? And they'll be able to do some affordability checks based on those. So that's a real important factor just to make sure. And I think a lot of agencies, may not get involved until you've actually physically got keys in hand, but it's too late then. You've got to make sure that you are purchasing the right property. So, even if it is just a second opinion, fire things over our way so that we can check. But yeah, make sure you've got the right mortgage in place.
Yeah, very important. A residential mortgage is not going to work. And usually a buy-to-let mortgage too, you need to have a dedicated holiday let mortgage. And yes, the lender will ask to see a rental income estimate from a reputable source. Sykes can be one of them, and they'll want to see the high, medium and low projections as well, so they can work out whether you can afford the mortgage, basically. All right, then number 3 then, Rachel.
Number 3, see what tax relief is available out there. So by no means am I a tax specialist or expert. So someone like Zeal, which I know you've done a podcast quite recently with, he's getting in touch with them, going through everything with them and just seeing what tax relief is available out there, whether you would be better set up as a limited company or not, depending on thresholds and other factors. They will go through everything with you. So there is still relief available out there despite some of the changes, but it's just making sure that you are, saving those pennies where you can, really. So yeah, just exploring, do your research into what tax relief is available out there for you.
Yeah, 100%. Always speak to the experts and remember that everybody's circumstances are different. And this is why you need to have a conversation with a company like Zeal, because they will point you in the right direction. Number 4 then, Rachel.
So point number 4 is consider your health and safety. So one of the most important things of being a landlord is making sure that your property is safe and in the best condition for anybody that's coming. So one of the big ones is insurance when it comes to health and safety. So ensuring that you've got adequate insurance. So building content is not going to cut it. You're going to need public liability insurance as well that's specific for holiday let. So just making sure that you've got the right level of cover for your property is key there. Other things to consider is gas safety certificates, if that's applicable, private water supplies, if that's applicable, also fire risk assessments. So we have some great templates on those, but you do need to consider if you particularly got a larger property or one that's over, more than just the sort of 2 stories, you're going to make sure that you have a professional one done. So you're going to want to make sure, particularly if you're going into the eaves of properties, that you've got the right plans and the right equipment and everything in place. If there ever was the absolute unthinkable to happen, that you're completely covered there as well. And then things just like regular maintenance in the property. So if you've got hot tubs, making sure that you adhere to all of those regulations and rules and cleaning and maintaining there too, but also pack testing. So for any of your portable appliances, making sure that they're regular tested so that you know that your guests are going safe and sound to your property. So that would be number 4.
Yeah, 100%. Health and safety, very, very important and really key to get that right from the start. Okay, then, your 5th thing to consider when buying a holiday let.
Okay, so number 5 would be regulations, rules, licenses. Know the area that you are buying in, and these things are changing. So, even if you've thought, well, I looked at that, sort of several months back, make sure that you are clued up. There is licensing, for example, already in place in the likes of Scotland, where they also have to show things like EPCs on their listings too. And then there is sort of minimum criteria when it comes to business rates. What are those thresholds? They're different when it comes to Wales and England. So are you meeting the right number of days available? Are you going to meet the right number of bookings that you need to secure as well to get on those business rates to move away from sort of council tax? So it's just knowing all of those. And one in particular that sort of springs to mind is Powys Council in Wales. So all of the holiday lets there have to have sprinklers in the properties, and that is only just one in quite a small, sort of niche region. But it's just making sure that you know the area, speak to your local district, speak to your local council, just to make sure that you are fully clued up on everything. And again, if you're going with a national agency, they should be able to provide you with all of that information and make sure that it's up to date and that you are fully clued on everything.
Yeah, very important. As you correctly point out there, it's different in all sorts of different regions across the UK. And another important thing to state as well is that if you are running a full-time furnished holiday let, you will probably want to move over from council tax to business rates. So again, look at your local council, contact them and supply the information you need, because that is likely to be a lot more cost effective than paying council tax. Okay then, Rachel, point number 6.
So when you are budgeting for your property, don't leave out the budget for the renovations or furnishing the property. A lot of times I can see owners that max themselves out when it comes to the actual purchase of the property, and then have nothing to then actually furnish it with. And then then you can really reflect in views of the property. It can really reflect in the sort of standard of the property. And it's where sometimes buying cheap can go wrong, because that sort of, it's not going to withstand any wear and tear. It ends up costing you more money because you're having to replace it more often than if you'd have purchased some really good quality pieces to actually put in the property itself as well. So just leaving yourself enough budget to play around with. We spoke before about aiming for the best standard that your budget will allow, aim for luxury. So just making sure that you do have enough budget to meet your aspirations for what you have for the property.
Yeah, exactly. Setting up a holiday let is not cheap. So you need to have some cash on hand after you've paid for the deposit and any stamp duty and all that kind of thing. You've got to make sure that you've got some money for renovation and furnishing. All right then, Rachel, point number 7.
Number 7 would be that occupancy. So, when you are going to the property, decide on what is the maximum occupancy that you're going to go for, and don't do the sort of the number one sort of don't break the rule of just trying to cram in as many people as possible into the property, with several bunk beds in an area, because again, it's going to be terrible when it comes to wear and tear on the property, but also it's not going to give that good value for money. And we are sort of pricing that property on the number of sort of bedrooms that's in there, that it's not necessarily always on sleep. So just making sure that it's the right occupancy. And then when you are in those kitchen and dining areas, that everybody who has a bed then has a seat at the dining table. Everybody has a seat in the living room to watch those movies and to play those board games. So think about, as I said, how many people you'd like to cater for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You don't want to be sleeping 6 if you can only fit 2 people in the kitchen. That's probably not going to be a good look for the photos and the guest experience, of course. And you want to provide that great guest experience because you're going to live or die by your reviews. Okay, then, Rachel, point number 8.
Number 8 would be pick your niche. So pick the clientele that you're going for. So if you're going to go for families, or if you're going to go for groups of friends, groups of adults sort of reuniting, if it's going to be couples, think about the things that's really going to tick the boxes for those. So families, it could be that there's a play area sort of outside, that there's a bath so that it's nice and easy to actually wash the kids after their day of exploring in the area. If it's, if you're close to the beach, you're going to want to have all your beach towels and everything ready so that they can take them. They haven't had to think about anything. And then if it's the sort of couples, you go more down the romantic side. So everything that you're purchasing is then catering for the niche that you're going for. Don't try to cater for everybody. That can sometimes, be a bit of a failure and can just be a bit of a headache for you. So, pick your niche. And again, if you don't know, who that is, for your area, speak to us and we can certainly help you to find that. And it could be couples and families, that go to these properties. It could be that you can offer to multiple, but we'll make sure that, as I said, you're ticking all the boxes for everybody.
Yeah, understand your target guest and set up your property accordingly makes a lot of sense. Okay, then, number 9.
Number 9, think about your local amenities. So think about a full package. So people go on holiday to make memories, right? And they are making memories in the property, but they also need something to do. And whether that is some beautiful walks, whether that's countryside, or whether that is the sort of coast, whether that is fun days out with the kids to local sort of attractions that's on there, restaurants. Everyone loves to go out and have these gastro tours of some of the areas, and we have some fantastic restaurants all across the UK. So think about what you're going to be able to offer, and that might be even some local discounts that you can get for some of the areas, the information that you want to include in your information pack for guests when they arrive. They could be totally new to the area, so you're going to want to give them as much information as possible. And some of the sort of the quirky experiences that I've seen lately is the alpaca walks, going and foraging, cooking classes, yoga classes that are on offer, private chefs to come in and actually, sort of cook a meal for yourself. So you've got that luxury of you not having to cook or do the cleanup afterwards. So just think about what can make you unique. With all the will in the world, you can get people to your property, but you've got to make your property stand out a little bit. You've got to make it, more attracting than the next property that somebody is going to want to look at. So let's make sure that you can get as many audiences in as possible.
Fantastic. Yeah, always considering that amazing guest experience. All right then, Rachel, 10th and final tip.
Get the right agent, particularly when you are new to holiday letting. With over 30 years of experience that our company has, and I've certainly worked for Sykes for 11 now, you learn all the do's and the don'ts quite quickly, and it's something that you can then share, sort of with owners. But we spoke about getting those all important booking levels for business rates. And you've got to make sure that someone understands you, that understands your needs, that if you want to be this hands-on owner and be involved, and it's a little bit of a lifestyle choice for you, that you get to meet guests and you get to put the welcome packs together and you get to do all the cleaning for the property, then absolutely you can do that. You can be as hands-on as you want. But if you want to be like yourself, where you were overseas originally with your property there, then you can be as hands-off as you want and hand those keys over and know that they are in trusting hands, and that people are going to respect and love that property just as much as you do. So get the right agency behind you. Ensure that you've got a sort of marketing powerhouse. We spoke about the booking levels, but that doesn't come easily, that we've achieved. That is backed by the marketing spend that we do, because as you can imagine, there's lots of people out there that is trying to go for the same traffic. So we want to make sure that we're getting eyeballs to your listing and then converting those into all important bookings as well. So get the right agency that really understands you, understands your needs, understands and builds that package around you, but can also actually generate the bookings for you.
100%. Yes. 10 brilliant tips there. So location, 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 get the right mortgage, think about tax relief. So talk to the experts at Zeal, get all your health and safety certifications in order. Think about local regulation because it's different wherever you are in the UK. Make sure that you budget for renovation and furnishing. Look at your occupancy numbers. Pick your niche, so get your target guest right. Think about the local amenities and work with the right agent if that's necessary for you. And of course, get in touch with the team at Sykes Cottages. Rachel, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you on this episode of Holiday Let Insider. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Just before we go, I did just want to plant just a little seed of sort of interest potentially for some of the listeners as well. So a lot of people can think about the traditional bricks and mortar, of a property, that is the only way to sort of enter this market. I've worked with owners that have entered this market in some unique ways recently. So they've looked at purchasing, instead of the bricks and mortar, they've looked at purchasing land and then ways that they can diversify that land. So they're thinking about shepherd's huts, converted buses, converted helicopters, railway carriages. It's endless, on the possibilities and the configurations that are out there. So that could be, another way to enter the market. And they do have a much lower entry point than your traditional bricks and mortar. But of course, it comes with a total separate business plan with this one. It's not the sort of property value appreciation that's the investment coming from, but more the growth and the sort of expandability of the actual property and the site itself. So we've seen owners go from having one or two, to then having several units where they just keep growing and growing and growing. And, some of these are all the rage right now as well into the glamping sector. So just as a little interest, maybe a little seed, a little bit of an encouragement, think outside the box too. It doesn't just have to be bricks and mortar to enter it. Of course, that is the traditional route, and that is what everyone thinks about when they think about a cottage. They think about that, sort of chocolate box cottage that they're having. But it could be flats, it could be in the centre of city centres as well, or it could be diversifying land. So yeah, the opportunities are endless.
There certainly are, yeah. And yeah, great food for thought there, and a brilliant kind of extra tip and a way to end it. There are more than one way to skin a cat, right? Lots of different opportunities. Right. And guests out there, they're looking for something a little bit different. They're looking for a real true experience these days, and there's so many different properties that can provide it. Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with our audience. Thanks for joining us on Holiday Let Insider.
Thanks for having me.
Great to chat to Rachel Brennan there from Sykes Holiday Cottages. Remember, location, location, location. Get your mortgage right, your tax issues, regulation. There's lots to consider at the start of your journey, and that episode was packed with some fantastic knowledge. All right, that's it for today's show. If you're keen to work with Sykes Holiday Cottages, head to sykescottages.co.uk/let your cottage. And for more free education, tips and trends from the short-term rentals industry, visit houseplanet.club, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcasts, and download a suite of ebooks for hosts and property managers. That's it for today's edition of Holiday Let Insider. Until next time, happy hosting.